Jake didn't like surprises, especially not ones that came with claws. The door to his small shelter opened with a hiss. Cold air rushed in from the alien moon's surface, followed by a tall, slender figure wrapped in a dark thermal cloak. She walked slowly, eyes glowing faint blue under the hood. Her skin, where visible, shimmered like scales. Jake blinked. "You must be the new assignment?" he asked. The woman pulled back her hood, revealing soft silver hair and pointed ears. Her face was sharp but not threatening, beautiful, in a wild way. "I am Elira," she said softly. Jake sighed. "Great, another one." The colony administration had been rotating aliens into human shelters for some kind of co-living program, a cultural understanding project. Jake didn't care for it. He came to Moon Station Delta to work alone, fix broken satellites, and live quietly. Now he had to share space with an alien who looked like she'd been pulled out of a fantasy story. He showed her the layout. "That's your bed. Don't touch my tools. Bathroom's that way. We share food but label everything." Elira just stared. "Do you understand me?" She nodded once, then walked past him like a ghost. No luggage, no smile, no warmth. That first night was silent, too silent. Jake couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he felt something watching him. Not looking, watching, from the shadows. He sat up. Elira was lying on her bed, her eyes open, glowing faintly in the dark. She wasn't blinking. He turned away. Days passed. She barely spoke. She moved without making noise, ate very little, spent most of her time staring out the window at the moonscape. Sometimes, Jake found her standing in the hallway at night, just standing. When he called her name, she'd vanish into her room without a word. One morning, he caught her trying to touch his datapad. "Hey, I said no touching my stuff." She flinched visibly, then dropped to her knees, not in anger, in fear. Jake was stunned. "I'm not going to hurt you." She slowly got up, eyes wide, trembling. Then she whispered, "Sorry," reflex. Jake realized something. Elira wasn't just quiet, she was scared. But of what? That evening, a blizzard hit the moon surface. Strongest in 6 years. Outside temperatures dropped to -200°C. The shelter shook under the wind. Jake stayed near the heater, sipping coffee, when he heard something. Not the wind, breathing. He turned. Elira stood near his bed. Her cloak was gone. She wore a tight, black undersuit that shimmered like liquid metal. Her body was trembling, not from cold, from something deeper. "Elira?" he said. She didn't answer. She walked slowly to his bed and climbed in. Jake froze. "What are you doing?" "I'm scared," she whispered. "Of what?" She looked up at him. "They're coming tonight." Jake's heart pounded. "Who's coming?" Elira clutched his arm. Her hands were cold, like snow. "They come when the wind screams." "I thought I was safe here, but I was wrong." He stared into her glowing eyes. "Who are you?" She didn't reply, but in that moment, Jake understood something important. This wasn't just a co-living program, and this woman wasn't just a quiet alien. She was hiding from something terrible, and tonight, it might be coming for both of them. Jake had never shared a bed with anyone, especially not someone with glowing eyes and freezing skin. He didn't sleep that night. Elira stayed close, curled up like a frightened animal. Her breathing was light, but her body twitched every few minutes. Jake kept still, too afraid to move, unsure what touching her again would mean. He could still feel her fingers on his arm, like frostbite that never healed. At 3:17 a.m. She sat up suddenly. "Don't speak," she whispered. Jake opened his mouth to ask why, but she pressed a hand over it. "Listen." A deep, distant sound rumbled through the shelter walls. Not wind, not machines, something alive. Jake's blood went cold. The next morning, The sun never rose. It wasn't just the blizzard outside. It was like light didn't want to enter the room anymore. Alira stood by the window, unmoving. She hadn't changed her clothes. She hadn't eaten. She hadn't even looked at him. Jake tried to lighten the mood. So. Bad weather, huh? No answer. Alira, talk to me. She turned slightly. They were close last night. Jake stood. Who are they? You keep saying they. What does that mean? Her eyes narrowed. Hunters. Alien hunters? No, not aliens. Not humans. Something else. Something wrong. Jake frowned. And they're after you? She nodded once. Because of what I know. That wasn't helpful. Later that day, Jake decided to check the security cameras he'd installed weeks ago. Most just showed snow and static. But the outside rear cam caught something different. 3:18 a.m., the same time Alira had sat up. A tall, black figure appeared in the corner of the frame. It had no face, no shape. It moved like smoke but cast a solid shadow. The footage glitched the moment it turned toward the shelter. Then, nothing. Jake replayed it 3 times before muting the video. He didn't want to hear the sound that came with it. A deep, crackling growl. Not from one mouth, but from many. Alira walked in behind him, silent as ever. You saw it, she said. Jake jumped. What is that thing? They follow me. They followed my ship. I thought I lost them. Why would they be after you? She looked away. Because I disobeyed them. Jake leaned forward. You were one of them? She shook her head. No, I fed them. That night, Jake set up extra motion sensors around the shelter. Alira didn't sleep again. She paced the hall, muttering softly in her alien tongue. Jake recognized only one word, repeated again and again. Kareth. He asked her what it meant. She replied, the one who whispers when you sleep. Jake didn't like that. At 2:59 a.m., the alarm went off. Something moved outside the east wall. Jake grabbed his flashlight. Alira grabbed his wrist. Don't open it. That's what it wants. He looked through the camera feed. The same black blur moved just beyond the snow. It didn't try to enter. It didn't knock. It waited. By sunrise, it was gone, but something had changed. Jake found marks on the outside wall, burnt handprints. Large ones. They smelled like metal and ash. Inside the shelter, Alira finally looked him in the eye. If I stay, she said, you will die. Jake shook his head. If you leave, you'll die alone. Her lips trembled. For the first time since she arrived, she smiled, just for a second, and in that second Jake knew. This wasn't just about survival anymore. Something ancient had followed her here, and somehow, without knowing why, he was already part of it. Jake didn't scream, but he almost did. The moment Alira's hand brushed his skin, it felt like fire, not pain, not heat, but energy. A sharp jolt surged through his chest, then down to his fingertips. He staggered back, gasping, heart racing, like he'd touched a live wire. Alira dropped the tool she was holding, eyes wide with fear. You touched my skin, she whispered. Jake clutched his chest. Yeah, you reached for the wrench and I tried to hand it to you. What was that? Alira looked down. Her fingers were trembling. It wasn't supposed to happen. Not with you. Not yet. Not yet, Jake said, voice rising. What are you talking about? You shocked me. She didn't answer. Instead, she backed away into the corner of the room, shaking, scared of herself. Jake tried to calm down. He poured water, handed her a cup. She didn't drink it. She just stared at her hand like it was cursed. I didn't mean to hurt you, she said softly. You didn't, Jake replied. But what the hell was that spark? Alira finally spoke. My species, we carry energy in our skin. Emotion controls it. Fear, anger, desire, they all burn different. Jake blinked. And what emotion just burned me? She hesitated. Looked up at him. Her voice was barely a whisper. Want. The shelter felt smaller that day, tighter, warmer. Jake couldn't focus on his work. Every time he turned a corner, she was there leaning against a wall, brushing her hair, walking barefoot down the metal halls. Always too close. Always silent. And now, he felt her before he saw her, like static before a lightning strike. She had changed something between them, and she knew it. That night, he locked his door. Not because he was afraid of her, but because he was afraid of himself. His mind was spinning with questions. Why did her touch affect him like that? Why was she so afraid of closeness, and most of all, why did part of him want her to touch him again? At 2:46 a.m., the power flickered. The lights died, so did the heater. The outside storm screamed louder than ever. Jake grabbed a flashlight and opened the door to the hallway. Alira was already there, standing barefoot in the dark, glowing slightly, her eyes full of panic. "I didn't do this," she said quickly. "Then who did?" A low hum started coming from the ground. Jake looked at the floor. It was vibrating. "Something's coming," Alira said. He moved to grab his tool belt, but she grabbed his hand instead. "Wait." Another spark. Jake's arm twitched as the energy surged again, hotter than before. He groaned, dropping to his knees. Alira crouched beside him, clutching both of his hands. "No. Not now. It's too soon." Her voice trembled, but this time, it wasn't fear. It was something else. Her breath was warm on his face. "Jake. If I complete the bond, I can protect you." Jake looked up. "Protect me from what?" The floor thudded beneath them. From the ceiling vent, black smoke began to drip, and a whisper filled the room. "You touched her, human. Now she is ours." Jake didn't move, not because he was frozen by fear, but because Alira was glowing, not her skin, not her eyes. Her entire body, soft pulses of silver light moved under her suit, like waves in a quiet sea. Her breathing was slow, too calm for someone facing death. The black smoke that crept through the vent was gone now, vanished, like it had been scared off. Jake didn't understand. "Alira, what did you just do?" She looked at him with something between guilt and sorrow. "I broke the code." After sunrise, the emergency power kicked in. The shelter lights flickered back, and the heat returned. But the warmth in the room felt fake. Jake sat at the table, staring at the steaming mug in his hands. His mind was racing. Alira sat across from him, silent. He finally asked, "What code are you talking about?" She looked up. "Our oldest law. From birth, every member of my species is marked with a skin memory. We're not allowed to touch outsiders, not fully, not without bond permission." Jake raised an eyebrow. "And what happens if you do?" Her voice dropped. "The body reacts, and so does the clan." Jake leaned back. "So you're saying, because you touched me, you're now breaking some ancient alien law?" "Not just breaking it," she said. "Violating it in the worst way." A loud beeping interrupted them. Jake turned to his console. One of the orbiting satellites had picked up a new ship entering local space. Unregistered. No human ID. No alliance. "Signal." Alira walked up behind him and stared at the screen. Her body went still. "They found me," Jake asked. "Your people?" She shook her head slowly. "No, my keeper. The one who branded me with the code." Jake stood. "Are they dangerous?" She gave him a look he didn't like. "They don't kill to punish. They erase." That night, Alira placed something in Jake's hand. A thin metal disc, warm to the touch. "What's this?" "My species mark. If I vanish, this proves what happened." He looked at it, confused. "I don't want proof. I want answers." Alira finally sat down across from him. She explained. Her kind are bred in high-caste labs, raised for specific purposes: diplomats, scholars, and in rare cases, connectors. These rare ones are born with emotional energy that bonds with others. Alira was one, but her bond was too strong, too human, too uncontrolled. She was scheduled to be reset. Instead, she escaped hitching a ride on a cargo freighter that landed here. Jake listened, heart pounding. So when you touched me, she nodded. The bond activated. He swallowed. And what happens now? She looked away. You're marked, and they will come for you too. The next day, Jake found a mark on his chest, faint, circular, silver dotted. Hadn't been there before. He didn't tell Alira. That evening, as the second blizzard of the week began to howl outside, Jake stared at the vent where the black smoke had appeared. He whispered, "Why didn't it attack last night?" Alira replied from the corner, "Because you were mine." Jake turned. "What?" She stood slowly, her body glowing once again, faint but steady. "When I broke the code and touched you fully, your body gave off the signal. The message was clear: you're bonded, and that protects me? For now. But they're watching, testing our connection." Jake stood still. "And if we break it?" Her answer was instant. "You'll die. And I'll be pulled back into the dark." Jake woke up freezing, not just cold shaking, teeth chattering, breath fogging, freezing. He sat up and saw ice forming on the inside of the walls. The heater was dead again. So were the lights. The emergency battery wasn't even humming. He grabbed his jacket and flashlight, fingers numb. "Alira?" He called out. No answer. His breath caught. Her bed was empty. He found her outside the shelter's inner core, standing in front of the sealed supply chamber. She wore nothing but her undersuit, arms crossed, expression cold as the air around her. "I triggered the test," she said. Jake blinked. "What test?" She stepped aside, revealing a second chamber, one he'd never seen before. "It's called the Trial of Warmth. My species uses it to test a bond under extreme stress. Physical, emotional, intimate." Jake hesitated. "Wait. We're going in there." She nodded. "Together, or we both die." The door sealed behind them with a heavy clunk. The room was circular, made of old alloy, no windows, no heaters. Just a thermal drain at the center sucking every bit of warmth out. Alira sank to the floor. Jake's teeth chattered. "How long do we have?" 3 hours, she whispered. "If we don't reach full connection by then, the system doesn't open." He looked around. "So this is a death box?" She shook her head. "It's a choice box." Time slowed. Inside, minutes felt like hours. Jake tried to stay warm, wrapped in his jacket, rubbing his arms. Alira sat with her back to him, silent, still, barefoot. Jake finally asked, "What does full connection mean?" Alira looked over her shoulder. Her voice was low, nearly cracking. "Trust, surrender, skin to skin." Jake's throat dried. I don't want to force anything." She turned fully now. Her glowing eyes locked onto his. "You're not forcing me. This test isn't about pleasure. It's about bond survival. If one heart pulls away, both freeze." She moved closer. He didn't resist. Her hand touched his. No shock this time, just warmth, real warmth. Slowly, she guided his hand to her chest, over her heart. "Do you feel that?" she asked. Jake nodded. She pressed her forehead against his. Their breath mixed in the air. Her skin was colder than his, but the moment they touched fully, a pulse passed between them. Not heat, not energy. Belonging. Jake single quotes S vision blurred. Memories that weren't his flickered behind his eyes, images of Alira as a child, locked in a crystal room, observed like a lab animal, punished for touching a human boy once before. She pulled away, eyes wide. "You saw that?" Jake nodded slowly. "You were just trying to be kind, and they punished me," she said. "But you didn't flinch, because I don't want to lose you." The room suddenly shook. A red light blinked on the wall. Bond stabilized. Exit unlocked, but neither of them moved. Jake looked into her eyes. "What happens now?" Alira leaned forward. We live. Asterisk blood has a sound. Jake never knew that. Until now. It dripped onto the metal floor with a soft tick. Tick, tick, echoing in the silent room. His hand was bleeding, so was hers. And they were holding onto each other like they'd fall if they let go. Alira had cut their palms open. She didn't flinch when she did it. Her voice was calm, focused. This is the only way they'll stop hunting us. Jake stared at the deep slice across his palm. And if I don't do this? They'll kill you anyway, she said, her voice low. The blood pact wasn't just symbolic. It was genetic. Alien DNA and human cells weren't meant to mix. But her species had ancient bonding rituals, codes buried deep in biology. When joined by blood, the link became permanent. A soul knot. If one died, the other would feel it. If one suffered, the other would too. Jake didn't know how he felt about that. But he knew one thing. He didn't want to lose her. They pressed their palms together. Her blood was warmer than his. Thicker. It shimmered faintly under the dim lights. A light burned across their arms, silver veins glowing briefly, then fading into the skin. Jake gasped. Alira whispered, "It's done." The moment the bond completed, Jake felt her inside his head, not like reading thoughts. Not words. Just feelings. Tightness in her chest, the weight of guilt, the heat of old memories. And behind all of it, fear. Not of him, of losing him. He opened his eyes. She was crying silently, still clutching his hand. He didn't ask why. He already knew. The ship in orbit was no longer waiting. It sent a message directly to their comms. Unregistered bond detected. Prepare for retrieval. Jake stepped forward, furious. They're going to pull her out of here? Alira nodded. They'll tear us apart. Cut the bond out of me if they have to. Then we stop them. Alira looked at him, eyes wide, shocked. You'd fight my people for me? Jake's voice was steady. You're not their property. You're not even mine. But you chose me. And that's enough. They prepared the shelter. Jake loaded up the old emergency cannon from storage. Not much, just a rail launcher meant to stop debris. But it might get a message across. Alira showed him something better. She took off the pendant around her neck, a small silver shard, shaped like a fang. This is a signal disruptor. One use only, Jake grinned. Now you tell me? She smirked. I wasn't sure you'd survive the trial. Night fell. The ship began descending. Lights streaked the sky. The ground trembled. The comms screamed. Jake and Alira stood shoulder to shoulder at the edge of the outpost, wind whipping their hair. Jake whispered, "You ready?" She didn't answer. Instead, she took his face in her hands and kissed him, not soft, not sweet. Real. I've never belonged to anyone, she said. But I want to belong with you, Jake smiled. Then let's show them what our bond means. The ship didn't land. It crashed from the sky like a beast falling from the heavens. Flames lit the cold moon surface as metal tore into the ice. Jake shielded his face. Alira didn't move. She was already glowing again. Not with fear, with power. The blood bond had changed her. Jake felt it first, a pressure in his chest, like something alive was inside him, pulling tight. Alira looked at him. They're trying to sever the bond. How? By taking you. If they remove one half, the other fades. Jake clenched his fists. Then they'll have to take us both. She smiled, but there was no joy in it. Only fury. The ship opened. 3 figures stepped out, tall, armored, faceless. Not quite aliens. Not quite machines. They moved in silence. Jake raised the rail cannon. The lead figure spoke through a voice that sounded like broken glass. The bond violates species law. Surrender the connector. Jake didn't blink. She's not going anywhere. Suddenly, Alira stepped in front of him. I challenge, she said. The figures paused. Challenge is noted. Trial begins now, Jake whispered. What challenge? Alira's voice dropped. Old law. Bloodbound cannot be taken unless defeated in ritual. Jake stared. What kind of ritual? Alira looked over her shoulder. You'll see. The field changed instantly. The machines triggered a simulated zone gravity. Shifted, air pulsed, walls of energy blocked escape. The temperature dropped, the ground cracked with heat. The challenge wasn't just strength. It was connection. Jake and Alira had to move as one. Every move, every breath linked. When Jake stumbled, Alira caught him without looking. When she was knocked down, he pulled her back up. They weren't perfect fighters, but they were perfect together. The final blow came when Jake grabbed a loose energy rod and shouted her name. She turned. He tossed it. She caught it, spun, stabbed it into the lead. Figure's chest. It dropped with a sound like thunder. The field collapsed. The other two figures stepped back. Challenge complete. Bond approved. Enforcement withdrawn. Then they vanished. Silence returned. Jake dropped to one knee, gasping. Alira sat beside him. Neither spoke for a while. Finally Jake asked, "So, what now?" She leaned against him, softly, her voice almost playful. "Now we decide where to put the bed." He laughed. "You still want to sleep beside me after all that?" Alira looked up at him. Her eyes were calm. "Bright. I didn't. Crawl into your bed for warmth." "Then why?" She rested her head on his shoulder. "Because it felt like the only safe place in the whole galaxy." That night, for the first time in weeks, there were no alarms. No shadows. No whispers from the vents. Just a human. And the alien who chose him, and a quiet understanding that nothing would ever be the same. Because the bond wasn't just in blood. It was in the way she reached for him under the blanket. In the way he didn't flinch. In the way they didn't let go.